Today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers on the Varsity Podcast Network is brought to you by Varsity Search. Varsity Search specializes in helping small law firms in Texas hire lawyers and build great teams. So if you're thinking of making a move or your law firm is looking to hire, please go to varsitysearch.com and book a time to visit right into my calendar. Varsity Search, building great teams. Hey everyone, Daniel here back with you on Lone Star Lawyers. I hope you and your family are both healthy and safe. Before we get into this episode, I want to let you know that this past Friday, we released Hamilton Part 2, our special movie verdicts episode where we do a deep dive into the Broadway/movie classic. Now check out both Part 1 and Part 2 if you haven't had the chance yet. Both are in your feed right now. Another quick note, wanted to remind you of the opportunities that we are currently searching for. We are working with law firms looking for a 2 to 5 year business litigation attorney in Dallas, a 2 to 5 year family law associate in Tarrant County, and then a 3 to 12 year construction litigation attorney also in Dallas. There are also several big law opportunities out there as well that I could potentially connect you with if that's something of interest to you. You can email me, daniel@varsitysearch.com, or go to varsitysearch.com/lawyers to get more information, to apply for any of these opportunities, or just to make an appointment to visit with me and learn more about them. All right, today we remain in Austin, where our guest is Tom Jacob. Tom is a partner with Whitehurst, Harkness, Brees, Cheng, Alsaffar, Higginbotham, and Jacob, where he and his firm represent individuals and families in personal injury and medical malpractice cases, most notably those against the federal government under the National Federal Tort Claims Act. In fact, Tom and his firm have secured multiple 8-figure judgments for their clients, including 2 that were record-setting. Now, Tom clerked for Judge Will Garwood on the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals after graduating first in his class from Baylor Law School and serving as editor-in-chief of the Baylor Law Review. And I can personally attest to Tom's law school abilities, having sat in the contracts class with him over a decade ago. He was impressive, to say the very least. All right, with that, let's hop into our conversation with the one and only Tom Jacob on today's Monday Mentors episode of Lone Star Lawyers. How's everything going?
Good. Well, all this equipment I bought, because I did a podcast back in the day, and then it has become very handy in today's time where we're doing all these remote hearings and remote. I even recently just finished a Zoom trial.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Zoom trial. Was it I was just talking to somebody about like a pilot program for this. Is that what that was about?
Well, no. So in Travis County, they are doing a pilot program. They're trying to test various ways that they could do a Zoom or remote trial. So my case was actually a federal bench trial that closed up close to the end or close at the end of February, right at the beginning of March when all of this started going down, the COVID mess started occurring. And we had one witness that the judge wanted to finish off. And so we kind of waited and then the judge issued an order given that it didn't seem like COVID was going anywhere anytime soon. And so we finished that witness off by Zoom.
Wow.
Did that last week, actually.
Wow.
For right here from my own living room.
And did it go smoothly? Were there complications?
Yeah. No, it went really smoothly. I had no complaints on that end. Part of it too. We've been doing a lot of these remote depositions for a while now. Not to the extent that we're doing them now. But, just to save cost and travel and time and all that for witnesses we didn't think were, the primary witnesses that we needed. We every so often we would do a one-off Zoom deposition before COVID. And then now in COVID, this is the only way you do deposition. So it was so we've been doing, we've been doing so many depositions, and several hearings. Multiple hearings. I feel like I've had more hearings in this sort of COVID time, just because it's so much easier for the judges to get everyone together.
Absolutely.
To issue an order and say, click this link at this time.
Yeah.
So I've had more hearings because of that in federal court than, maybe even in all of last year.
That's so wild.
Right? Simply because it's so easy for judges to have that. I think they find it convenient as well.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad that, because sometimes you think of the typical judge maybe is not so willing to adopt the latest technology, and for sure liking to just have the way they've always done it for however many years, especially federal court. They've been on the bench for however long and they're never going away. So to be able, it's a credit to the bench, to the judges, both, I think, federal and a lot of state courts, to be willing to transition and learn the new technology and being able to accommodate hearings and, like you said, even finish off a trial and keep the wheels of justice moving rather than just have it totally get log jammed by COVID.
Yeah. Wow. No, I think so. I'm looking forward to what Travis County's pilot program does, just because I doing a jury trial is going to be a lot trickier.
Yeah.
And part of this lesson, I don't know if you judged any of the Top Gun competition this year at Baylor. So it was the first year that they had done the Top Gun competition all online.
Right.
So it was an entire mock trial competition done on Zoom. And, I was a judge for that. And then the big lesson that I took away from that was it is so easy for your jurors to be distracted, because I've got email on this side. I've got, messages. I've got, all of this stuff. I've got the entire internet in front of me. And so I'm just sitting there as I'm trying to pay attention. But, the one thing that I kept coming back to was, boy, if I were a juror, how could I not be distracted? How, you know what I mean? Especially if your trial lasts 2 or 3 weeks. Oh, easy question, right?
Yeah.
So I really want to see how they're going to address that, or what they're going to do. If anything, I don't know if there is anything that you can do about that.
Yeah. I think it's hard. And I had, talked with Liz Fraley about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I guess. Mm-hmm. And she was expressing some of her just concerns about, a remote jury trial, and just in terms of fairness to all the parties and everything else. And so, on top of the potential distractions that could plague the jurors, one, for sure. But just, are we able to ensure a fair and competent trial and everything else completely remote? I think it's still to be determined. But we're in a new world. We're having to figure this out, and
for sure
not able to let the perfect be the enemy of the good, probably some of the time with some of this. So I'm glad to hear that you're able to conduct a lot of the business remote. And we were just talking too recently about how you're talking about the efficiency of the hearings. Just what was a 10-minute hearing that became 3 hours with driving and rush hour and waiting and to be called up, is back to being a 10 or 15-minute hearing, and things like that.
and the same thing is true for depositions as well. My practice is heavily national. And so, really, literally any deposition that almost all of them are not in Texas, right? And so any deposition I take, it's 1 day of travel, right? 1 day to take the deposition. And then if I'm lucky, I can get a flight out that evening. But, if it's a really big deposition, right, more likely it's going to be a flight out the next day. So that's 2 days I've lost, right, for 1 day of deposition.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Wait. what happened to the private jet? Come on. No, you're roughing it on the commercial flights with the rest of us in the morning after a long depot.
Yeah, Southwest.
Well, I do want to ask you, and by the way, guys, we're talking to Tom Jacob, and we'll have inserted an intro before this, which I'll edit out some of this. But I wanted to ask you too about specifically with the depositions. The hearings, I think are I think make sense to me. But I'm thinking about what are some of the when you're doing these either Zoom or remote depositions, what tools are you using? What strategies are you, in terms of just like making sure it all works correctly and with the whatever exhibits you might be showing them, or just kind of making sure everybody's. What have you learned, I guess, too, in the last few months, maybe in tools and tips you could pass along to others as they kind of really jump into this Zoom and remote deposition world?
Well, we use Zoom, obviously.
Yeah.
And when this all started occurring about early March, where we're like, oh my gosh, we're all going to be working remotely, where we might have to do these depositions and hearings remotely. One of the things that I thought of was, well, how do I show witnesses in a very efficient way the documents that I want to show them? How do I get them to talk about it? And so I actually, one of the things that I did early on was I come from a little of a tech background as well. And so I built an app for myself that would allow me that integrates with Zoom and these other, screen sharing technologies, these remote technologies that allows me to quickly pull up case file documents, annotate them, and kind of display them in a way that is really easy and sort of user friendly for me, and allows me to organize my deposition. It's sort of like custom built for me, basically, to organize my file in a way that I can take those depositions, make that process pretty easily. And so I've used it in, I don't even know how many depositions I've had since COVID started, but I have used it throughout this entire time period, and that's been really helpful. I think my partners use, just what they do is they just they screen share and they pull up PDFs on their screen, and that works just as efficiently, I guess. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's really my sort of workflow in taking a deposition I will have sort of built in my file ready to go for that deposition using this app that I've created.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah. Any plans to market this new app that you've created? Or is it the new Slack that all of a sudden someone's going to figure out, hey, we could just sell this thing?
Yeah. No, not really. I mean, the problem with marketing is that then I'd have to support other people's usage of it, and that's not my job. I've already got one job.
You got one job. You don't need another.
I don't need a second one.
No, I hear you. Well, that's cool. Awesome. Well, hey, tell us a little more about your practice and your firm, and let the folks listening in a little bit on what you all do and who you represent, what type of work you do.
Sure. So my practice is mostly a federal court, national practice. I do mostly personal injury and medical malpractice. We represent, again, mostly veterans and military service members against the United States. But that is a little misleading because, really the key to our practice is catastrophic personal injury, right? So that can come in a lot of forms. For example, I have 3 of my cases right now are medical malpractice, where catastrophic brain injury that's going to affect a child's life for the the rest of that child's life, right? But I also have a case where a building fell on my client. I have our firm is active, and we have a significant portion of the clients in the Sutherland Springs mass shooting case. So that a lot of my time is dedicated to that. And so it comes in different flavors. It's not necessary, you say personal injury and medical malpractice, you think one thing, but it's surprisingly diverse practice in that sense.
Yeah. How do potential clients typically find you guys? Is it a lot of referral type client development? Are you just at this point now? I know you guys and your partners have been around for a number of years doing this, and so now reputation and all of that success that you guys have had, I'm sure puts you in a position to be able to attract clients pretty well and maybe easier than others. But how do typical clients find you? Obviously, a lot of veterans you mentioned.
Yeah. I think it's definitely a combination of all of the above. Yeah. There's a referral is a very important way of getting at it, and we're active in our communities and answering questions and writing and publishing, all that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of lawyers who do this type of work know us through that means. We try to be as helpful as possible on that front. And so when they have a question about an issue, they know, okay, well, Tom might know something about this, and hopefully that gets them thinking, okay, maybe this is something that I can work with Tom on, and I'm happy to do that. And obviously the other way is just Google. People search for this type of stuff, and then as a firm we have a decades long history of doing this type of work, and so our results sort of speak for themselves. And I think that's something that clients are looking for is what have you done in the past on this type of case or this type of work, and so I think that helps as well.
Yeah. Are there anything? Is there anything new happening within the type of work that you do in terms of obviously suing the federal government and its agencies, whatever? But are there changes to the law or changes to practice, procedure, anything like that you're paying attention to? I'm thinking about just if you're doing a hot topics at a CLE on the type of work that you do, what would be kind of 1A or 1B on the list? Mm-hmm.
Well, we actually just did a hot topics.
There you go.
So there are a couple of things that are sort of are looming and have been looming.
Yeah.
One thing, and for folks that don't know our area of practice, military service members have not been allowed to sue. If you're active duty, you have not been allowed to sue the federal government for medical malpractice or personal injury, right? So, I mean, you go in and they lob off an arm when they should have, leave a sponge in, any basic things like that. You would think, okay, well, they should be able to get compensation for that. But for the greater part of 5 decades, there was a judge-made law called the Feres Doctrine that basically barred active duty service members from bringing any type of claim for medical malpractice or personal injury. Just this last year, and one of my law partners, Laurie Higginbotham, was really instrumental in helping answer questions and getting this the law shepherded through. Congress passed a law basically abrogating the Feres Doctrine. So now soldiers are active duty service members. They're still not allowed to sue the federal government, but they can bring an administrative claim against the federal government. And they can, it's not perfect because there's no, if the agency that committed the tort decides, we don't think we should compensate you for this. There's no independent neutral arbiter, like an Article 3 court that they can go to and have their day in court. So it's not perfect, but it is much more than these folks have had for the last 5 or 6 decades.
Wow.
And so that's been a big change that we're just now seeing. It just went into effect, and so we're just now kind of getting our hands around it. The agencies are just now passing the relevant regulations on point. So that's new.
Yeah.
And the other thing, of course, is this, COVID. Congress is working on liability immunity provisions arising out of COVID, and we don't know how broad that's going to be, whether it's going to affect things outside of COVID or what the consequences of that are going to be. And so we're keeping an eye on that as well, because that has the potential to affect, in all of our clients. And we have no clients that we have no claims that are related to COVID in any way. But we're always worried that Congress could do something to adversely affect our clients in that way that has nothing to do with COVID or any of the pandemic stuff that's going on.
Yeah. All of a sudden, just there's this extra level of immunity or kind of barrier to break through if you're trying to, Yeah. And right now the Republican bills are sort of focused on tort immunity when the vast majority of lawsuits arising out of this whole COVID situation have nothing to do with torts. They're not tort lawsuits. Yeah. I think, that there are organizations out there that have done surveys on the type of lawsuits that are out there related to COVID, and the tort lawsuit sliver of the pie really is a tiny, tiny sliver, right? The rest are, there's employment, of course, but evictions are a huge issue that they need to deal with, but doesn't that the current bill, as I understand it, doesn't affect that. So that's obviously something concerning. For sure. Yeah. And for context, people listening later in September or after, maybe we're recording this July 30th. And so by then, we may actually have a bill at that stage. Who knows? They're obviously talking about it right now. Tom, I want you to reflect back to the first couple of years in practice when you got out of law school, start practicing. What's maybe something that you learned early on in your practice that has stuck with you and that is a key part of how you practice today that you'd want to share with the younger lawyers in the audience?
I would say, and there's actually a story behind this, if I can give you a story.
Please. This is a podcast. Stories made for stories.
When I was not even a lawyer, I was a clerking at a firm, before graduating law school in one of the summers. And I did, sort of traditional assignments that you would give a clerk. Hey, I want you to write this motion or draft this first draft of this motion, right? And so this was and it was really like one of my first legal jobs. I'd never worked at a law firm or anything like that before law school. Nothing, didn't know any lawyers, anything like that. Yeah. And so all right, I can do this. I've done this in law school. I can do a motion. And so I typed it out and all that stuff. I thought my, law was perfect. There's nothing that I got that law right. I'm going to fill it out and finish it and turn it in. And I'm putting the little signature block of the partner that assigned it to me. And I was like, okay, well, here's what goes in a signature block according to the local rules. Oh, I need the state bar number. Oh, he knows his own bar number. I'll just put a blank, let him fill it in, right? And so I turn it in, and he pulls me into this office, and his office, and he's like, good job. There's nothing I want to change about the substance of it. The real criticism I have for you is you didn't find my bar number. And it really stuck with me because he was absolutely right. He was at 100% right. And it has always stuck with me because I could have found his bar number.
Right.
You know, there was nothing stop. I mean, it's online.
Yeah.
We could have pulled it up. There's no reason I you know, and the lesson that I took away is like, look, you know, whenever you're turning something in, even if you're the lowest man on the totem pole in terms of like drafting,
right,
or work product, make it perfect. Make it something that you would file with a court, or you would present to the public. You know, even if you know that there's no way my draft, I'm the lowest person on this totem pole, there's no way my draft is going to be the final draft, right? Like this is like not even draft 1, it's like draft 0.01, right?
Right.
Even if you know that, it doesn't, I mean, you know, it might be changed, you know, that you're not going to have a perfect draft, that's fine, but still try to make it as perfect as you know, in your mind, you know, when you make it as perfect as possible and make it as ready to file, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that, because I was just recently talking to someone a lawyer who was telling me along the same lines about how they would have a young lawyer, maybe even a clerk, I can't remember, come in, bring in an assignment, and leave blanks within the substance of it, like for maybe it was a fact question of something not known to the person or whatever, and that lawyer's comment about it was, hey, you know, just make the assumption, like put something in there, write it as if whatever. I mean, you can still have it either like, you know what you need, you need to confirm these things, but I can't, as the lawyer who assigned the assignment, you're making more work for me to try to figure out what all these missing blanks are. You know, if you put in things, it's like you said, the idea being write something that could be literally turned over and filed.
And the other thing that I would add is there's going to be very rare scenarios where you can't figure out what should go in that blank.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
True. I mean, look, there's going to, you know, you're not going to know everything, but there's nothing stopping you from getting out of your chair, and asking someone, right? And it doesn't have to be, you know, like I know people listening are probably not, in the same situation I am in, you know, where I'm in a very small firm, very, you know, I have no problem barging into everybody's offices and talking their ear off. You know, I've done the big firm thing, so it can be incredibly intimidating if one of the managing partner assigns you work and, you know, to barge into the office and be like, I got a bunch of stupid questions, right? Like that's not the only person you can ask, right? He's got a paralegal. Make friends with that paralegal. Ask that paralegal, right? Like, hey, let me ask you some stupid questions, right?
Yeah.
And most people are happy to help you, right? Like, but you know, and speaking from the other side of that coin, right? Like, as you know, we've got associates and we've got interns, all that kind of jazz. And like, I have no problem answering stupid questions. I would rather them, because, you know, even if I don't know it, I can be like, hey, this is where you need to go look at it. Right. Go find it, right? Like go hunt it down here, or here's a treatise that has the answer in this chapter, or here, you know, here's the search that I would do on Westlaw, or here's the website. You know, I've got no problem, because I would much rather them go and do that work if they know where to find it than me being like, okay, well, I got to fix all of this. And that's it's an inertial barrier.
Absolutely. Is there anything that you got that lesson early, which is good. I'm good for you. Is there anything that you've learned more recently, maybe in the last couple of years, that you wish you would have thought of or would have known, or someone would have shared with you when you were getting started?
Well, so I don't know if this is definitely something I've taken to heart more recently. Yeah, but
that counts.
I definitely knew this all along. And what I mean is, like, this is something they teach you in like at Baylor, it's called LARC, the legal writing class. Yeah. But I mean, you know, whatever your legal writing class is called, right? Like first year, they definitely teach you this, and I assume they teach it to you in undergrad. I know that I got this lesson in in high school for sure. It's when you're writing, you should always outline. right? And I always kind of thought, I remember Professor Corden at Baylor. He's our legal writing professor. He was on. He told us to do this. You need to outline, and I always kind of remember, and definitely arrogantly, and this is definitely my fault for not taking this lesson to heart. Thinking, well, maybe that's a lesson for a previous generation when you didn't have Microsoft Word and you couldn't just, highlight, right, drag and rearrange and all that kind of stuff. And I don't really need to outline because my outline is in Word. I can move it around easily. I can rearrange. I've got headings. I've got all of this stuff, right?
Right.
And in recent years, I have come full circle on that. Like now I outline everything.
Wow.
Everything. I outline depositions. I outline obviously written work product, everything I outline. And I have a entirely separate application where I do my outlining versus where, I write prose in Word and then do my outlining in a completely separate application because it allows me to separate the substance. So when I'm doing the outlining, I'm focusing on the substance, and then when I'm converting the outline to prose, I can focus on the form. Right. And so that separation of form and substance has been a real game changer. I think, and that's why I say this is something I should have known.
Yeah, no.
It was something that was taught to me.
Yeah.
I just stupidly ignored that advice, and I would recommend everyone listening, not do what I did.
Well, listen, I think that's something everybody needs to hear, and we're probably close to 40 episodes in now. I don't think anyone has said that. And but that tells me that I think a lot of people probably are just like you were up until whenever that revelation happened and thought the exact same thing. I know I did, and I would have. So no, that's a great one. Was there a specific moment in time? Can you point back to, I'm going to try this outlining thing, or what made you switch? What happened?
Well, it was because I had I just had to respond to this it was like 3 sets of motions all filed at once, all covering a million different subjects, and I had like X number of days, like 21 days or whatever to respond to all 3. And I was like, it was just a daunting task. Right. And so I'm like, I need to start taking notes and figure out where to go. And so I opened up this separate, it's actually literally, it's called OmniOutliner, and it's a Mac app.
Yeah.
I love it. In fact, just to show you how stupid I am, I've had OmniOutliner through all of law school and part of undergrad. This is an app I've had on my computer all along.
Yeah.
So this is not not technologically, like there was no burden, no hurdle that was preventing me from doing this other than myself.
Yeah.
So it was just one of those things where I needed to, a place to take notes, and I was like taking notes, and I was like, oh, this is great. Look, I can do this. And then I can reorganize. It's organized. And then I had all these notes, and I was like, if I just move this around, it creates a nice structure. And, okay, well, the substance of it looks good. Okay, well, let me start writing. And then I started writing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, as I'm writing, I'm thinking about how I should be saying things and how it's best presented and not the substance of it.
Right.
And that, that is an entire, like that allowed me to like really focus on that aspect of writing, compartmentalizing it versus the, the substance of it. And so that's what sold me on it. And so ever since then, I've just been like, well, is there something that I'm doing that I can outline? So I.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and we'll put a link to this old app in the show notes so people can find it and try it out. That's great. So last topic I want to ask you about before we wind up our time is hiring and interviewing and some thoughts and advice to folks maybe going through the process of job hunting and all of that. When you look at resumes, cover letters, transcript, whatever you request or comes through from a document standpoint, what are a couple things that you're looking for, maybe on the positive side and on the negative side of things that you're really kind of looking out for before you move someone through or not?
Well, in terms of like resumes and cover letters, so I'm going to be a little biased here because I've it's funny I've created a little niche, not industry because nobody actually pays me for this. It's just a lot of my friends ask me to rewrite their resumes. So I've done like dozens of these now. I feel like so the big lesson. And part of it is so when I clerked, one of the things that we did at the clerkship is basically hire your replacement. So you go through hundreds of, thousands, I think definitely thousands of resumes and cover letters and writing samples. And so ever since then, people have sort of been like, when discussing it, I tell them, oh, this is what we need to look at. Or that's what you need to look for.
Yeah.
Or this was something that was annoying me when I did this. And then eventually they were like, well, can you take a stab at like designing my resume for me or my, CV for me? And then I did. And then like they shared it. And then so like it just kind of went around that way. But I would say the number one thing in terms of written product that you're turning in for that type of, and really all written product to remember is as lawyers, you are professional writers. And so you got to ask yourself, what does that mean to be a professional writer? Well, not only substantively, you have to be a professional, but also you're a professional publisher. Right. So that means you need to have a little knowledge about typography, how layout and design of a document work. And how those two aspects, the layout design, affect the substance, right? You got to think, okay, how can I make this document that I'm designing help the reader absorb the information in that document?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so, that's a generally applicable lesson, but that's also specifically applicable to resumes and cover letters and all of that is you are a professional writer and a professional publisher. So act like it.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And then when you get into an interview situation with the candidate, what are a couple of things maybe that you're looking for there or that stand out, or common, issues that people have within an interview situation? I think this advice is probably not going to be as generally applicable, maybe partly because that where I'm coming from, we're in a very small firm. And, so when we're trying to hire someone, we're literally taking a year-long bet on you, and in a very intimate environment of just a few small people, we want someone that will fit in well. And so, by the time we're at the interview stage, we're really making sure, there's nothing weird about you. Because, how do you interview for that?
Yeah. Well, it's just, you got to have a conversation, Yeah. You got to have a conversation. And so as long as you can have a conversation, that's really important. Just hold that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I mean, we laugh about it, but it's true. And I find myself giving this advice fairly often to people when they get into an interview situation, is that most of the time, not always, but most of the time, the firm has made some type of judgment that, at least on paper, that the person can do the work, that the actual work is not going to be, there's at least some level of confidence the person can do the work based off of what they've done in the past and success they've had, or whether that's academic or in the practice already. And that the interview stage really is about figuring out whether that person is just a good fit within this other group of people, and whether they'll work well together and get along well and be a good part of the team. But so many candidates, I feel like, really focus in on, having to like kind of highlight or enhance certain aspects of their credentials, I guess. Whereas really it's more about just kind of building that relationship and that connection in a lot of ways. And like you said, it's just trying to figure out if someone's too out there for us or too whatever for us. I don't know. And that at that stage too, ultimately it's as much for the candidate's benefit as the firms, is that the candidate doesn't want to be someplace where they're not a good fit either. So
yeah,
I mean, it's really true. It's a mutual trying to figure out, is this the right, like you said, it's a year-long more bet, and is this the right place for me?
Mm-hmm.
But, well,
absolutely true.
Well, great. Well, Tom, we've got some rapid-fire questions to close up our time, and if you're ready for that, we'll hop into those.
Sure.
Awesome. All right. So, name one trait or characteristic you most want to see in an associate.
I would say hustle.
There you go.
You got to hustle.
Yeah. What habit has been key to your success?
Laziness.
Goes along.
I'm serious. A lot of people laugh about that, but
well, you got to give a little explanation on that one.
There's a famous quote, something that goes something like, I will always choose a lazy person to do a difficult job because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it. And I take that to heart because, people, I talk to people who know me and I give them that same answer. I was like, I feel like really like the key to my success is I'm incredibly lazy. I don't want to do hard work that takes a lot of time to do. So I figure out a way to do it in a shorter amount of time. So
you build the Deposition app so that it's easier for you to do the deposition.
Exactly. Like I have it's weird. I have no qualm about investing a lot of time up front to make sure I save a lot of time down the line.
Yeah, that's right. You're just an investor in time. Absolutely. That's awesome. All right. Favorite app or productivity tool? We've already kind of said one, but yeah, anything new?
Yes. Okay. All right. So one app that is always open on my computer, and unfortunately this is also a Mac app, so I'm sorry, Windows people. It's Solver. It's spelled SOUL, like soul,
right?
VER,
right?
And it's a calculator, and it is like I love it. I'm obviously like a lot of lawyers went to law school because I couldn't do math, right? You've heard that before,
sure.
But it is it does like calculations of time. So if you need to calculate, okay, what's 28 days from today, right? Common calculation lawyers do.
Yeah. What's
12 hours from today, right now? What's 36 hours from right now? It does, what is, if I need to have a call with someone at 4 p.m. Eastern time, when is it going to be Central? It does like all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it's always open on and it also does like math, right? Like what's 20% of X, that type of stuff. So that app is always open on my computer.
That's cool. Yeah.
Looking at it right now.
I've found myself on multiple occasions going out just to Google and finding some calculator that'll tell me, especially on days. Yeah. Like what day is 28 or 34 or however many days from now, without having to kind of like figure it out on a block calendar. No, that's great.
Yeah. So that's super useful.
Yeah.
It's that time calculation, math, date calculation, hour calculation, all that kind of stuff.
Cool. And SOULVER, you said Solver.
Yeah, like soul.
Solver. Cool. All right. Favorite social distancing activity?
All I'm doing these days in terms of outdoor activities is running.
Yeah.
I'm incredibly lucky to live in Austin where I can see the trail from outside my window.
Right.
And so we've got this beautiful like green belt covered so completely shaded, and so you're not running in like Texas summer, like 100 degrees sun directly on you. But I think that's probably the number one thing that I do outdoors these days, unfortunately.
Hey, it's a good one.
I wish I could, I long for the days of travel and hiking and all that. And I know we'll be back there soon. I just, so everyone hold firm.
That's right. Last one, favorite legal movie?
Oh, definitely My Cousin Vinny.
Yes.
Anyone who tells you My Cousin Vinny is not their favorite legal movie is a liar. Or maybe they haven't seen it. I'll give them that.
Yeah, we're enough distance from
that
now.
Is
maybe
a character fault.
Everyone listening, if you haven't seen it, go see it. And if you have, and it's not your favorite, do some self-evaluation. Yeah. No.
Stop lying to yourself and stop lying to everyone else.
That's right. That's right. Oh, that's a good one. Well, Tom, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're busy and really appreciate you stopping by, sharing, and a lot of people I know are going to get a lot out of this. So thanks for doing it.
Thanks for talking to me.
Yeah.
It was fun.
All right. My thanks again to Tom Jacob for joining us on the show. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider doing 2 things for me? Would you subscribe so you don't miss an episode? And then would you also go and rate and review the podcast in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts? Also, don't forget, if you or someone you know might have interest in any of the opportunities that we are currently searching for, or you or someone you know might be interested in making some kind of move, please contact me, Daniel at varsitysearch.com, or go to varsitysearch.com/lawyers. Finally, be sure to check out part 2 of Hamilton, our special movie verdicts episode. It is in your feed right now. All right, that's it for today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Thanks again so much to each of you for listening. I'm Daniel Hare with Varsity Search, and we'll talk with you next time.